Hi, I am Lina Fruzzetti from Anthropology, and this is Faces of Brown Research. I was born in Eritrea, which is Northeast Africa, up in the mountains. It's like almost 8,000 feet high, where the capital is. And my mother is Eritrean, and my father is Italian. She eloped with this guy. I think it was a uniform that attracted her, because he wasn't all that, guy. He was okay. It was my father. But she eloped with him, and I was born when she was 16 years old. And then the second, my brother was born 3 years later. So when my father died, my brother was 3 months, and I was 3 years old, and my mother was 19 years old. She was a widow at 19 and never, remained a widow. Being a biracial person, half white, half black, half colonized and half colonizer father, was not the easy place to live in Eritrea at the time. And then they lost the Italians lost the war to the British. And there's a priest who actually knew my father very well. Apparently, from what I hear from him, he was quite something, that this father of mine, to have given up a good job he had in Italy at the time when a lot of Italians was out of jobs. And he had a family, was married, and had a daughter. And from one day to the other, just left and joined the court to set up a new nation somewhere else. So a lot of Italians got on that boat and began this new settlement in Eritrea. So colonialism for the Eritreans was slightly different than colonialism that came out of the British, definitely from the Germans and Dutch and so forth, and the English. So there was a sense that we go there and live there. So this was the kind of father that I had, but I don't remember him much. It's hearsay from people who knew him, who would tell me what he was like and stuff like that. He was... I find him interesting. I find he had a wild streak to him, a more adventurous streak. I mean, this is what I come to understand. Maybe that's where I get the adventurous side of me, because I have traveled more than any of my cousins, my family members. I mean, I have seen a lot of the world for work, though, and maybe that's why I chose the kind of field that I did. But we left Eritrea when I was 3 and moved to 3 or 5. We moved to the Sudan, which is a neighboring country, as refugees, with my mother and my brother and I. Well, being a displaced person in itself, let's say you're a refugee, I'm 5 years old in a country that's Arab and Muslim, of which I'm none. I'm biracial, half white, half black, Christian. To be a refugee in a place like that, already there are stigmatizing words that they use to refer to you. You become ajnabiya, which means a foreigner, a stranger. You become not one of us. And all these terms sets you apart from the majority. Like you're 5. You have a lot of friends of that age. We try to make friends, but they use these terms to already identify you and sets you apart. It will take a while for them to trust you and bring you in their code. And in the schools, I went to British boarding school at that time, because the bishop of that school knew my father, so we were allowed to be students in that we couldn't pay. We didn't have a penny to pay. So this kind of separation always begins to makes you understand, why are they not including me? It's because I am displaced, I'm a foreigner, because I'm a refugee, I am the other, quote unquote, between parentheses. And so I come from there to study in Chicago as an undergraduate, and in America I'm made to think differently. It's not the stranger, it's not maybe yes the alien, but more than that, I began to be identified by my color. And I said, what's that color has to do with who I am? But this is how the new forms of identification here is to refer to your color. I have never been identified by my color back in the Sudan or in Eritrea, because all of them look like me, right? So you begin to understand what is the significance of not being a refugee now. I'm a foreign student. What does it mean to be a person of color? What does it mean to be referred to as the black person? And so that you add that to being displaced, right? To being refugee. I'm adding now, I'm a student. I'm not settling in this country yet. But that then begins to be something new for you to think about, right? And I have to train myself to think in those terms, even though I object to them. I object to being referred to as a black person. It's not that there is a negativity in blackness, but I want to be identified by who I am. What am I doing? What are my work? What is my this and that? And I find that difficult for people to separate color from work, from productivity. So you begin to be a bit resentful. You begin to be angry at times. And you say, why don't you just look at what I produced, Like, for example, when the last person who got tenure here, I wanted to know exactly how many articles he had and to judge how did he got tenure, and I need to know how I should be getting tenure. And so if he had one book, I had 3. If he had one article, I had 4. And it begins to be that way so that nobody could say, it's her color that gave her tenure. You see, when you're a person already being identified as being different, you have to take charge of so many things that you did not think your other colleague actually do the same. They don't have to. I did not have that privilege. The challenges had to do exactly because I am different. And these are the challenges we face. And so it was tough. But it helped me understand how you navigate a life that you weren't. I wasn't prepared for this. I wasn't prepared to come here and have to fight what it means to be different. I wasn't a refugee. I was just a student. So I had a chemistry teacher. I'll just tell you this: a chemistry teacher in my school, who was the only African-American teacher in that college. And I remember going to her, I said, what does the N-word mean? Somebody used it when I was a freshman in college. And she says to me, why are you angry? I said, I don't understand what it means. And I said, they didn't refer to my mother's tribe. And she says to me, honey, have a seat. And she said, from now on, forget the tribe. Nobody's going to refer to it because we don't refer to it. You're going to be defined as a black person, and it's okay. So these encounters, and you never forget. Being different is a challenge. It's really a challenge, not just color-wise, but or gender-wise or sexuality-wise. Anthropology has been an okay field for me to be in. I was trained to do economics. My first degree is in economics. And I was going to go and study agricultural economics. And that's between senior year and graduate school. I met this lecturer. I went to a lecture at Roosevelt College in Chicago. And it was a lecture about female circumcision and stuff. And I said, because I grew up in Sudan, I know the Sudanese women go through this ritual. And I said, how can anybody talk about this? And so I went and listened to this lecture. It was a lecture given by an African-American professor called Sinclair Drake. And I wait for everybody to leave. I said, sir, how can you speak about that? It's forbidden. It's taboo. And what is this field? And he told me it's called anthropology. And I didn't know anything. And I told him who I was. He said, work with me for a year. And if you like the field, then you can, so put your graduate work on hold. And I did. It was the first time I gambled in my life, and I never regretted it. And because after that, I started at the University of Chicago. and began to study. And actually met my husband too, was working in India. So instead of doing African anthropology, I did India. I worked on India with him. So in anthropology, the skills you learn, it's like, it was really fit exactly for who I am. The skills you learn teaches you how to approach studying the other. People that you have no relationship with, people that are totally so different from me. They are Hindus, I'm Christian. They speak a different language. I learned it in one of my 5 languages that I speak. So experiencing how do I address you, who is so different, I had to train myself. How did people address you when you were a stranger, when you were not an immigrant only, but when you were a refugee, a displaced person? So those skills came to me so fast. And I found doing fieldwork one of the easiest things. It's like the perfect shoe you can fit in, the perfect space to be in. And I could identify with people. And there is a skill other than learning how to do it, the 1, 2, 3, 4, the skill of personality. And that is one of respect. You show them that you respect them, they will respect you back. But if you don't respect them, they know it immediately and they will just ignore you, don't want to answer your questions. So the skills that I gained from anthropology, the field of anthropology, were the skills I lived it. I experienced it. Because I had to address when people say, but you're different. And I have to explain to them why I'm different, because I'm not an Arab. I'm not a Muslim. Or I'm not a white American. We think I still am a person, a human being, So to bring down all this knowledge to a mere fact that we all share the same kind of humanity is what really you have to work at in anthropology, but also daily life, living every day, crossing the green, how people look at you or not. So, it's just, it's like living anthropology 101 all the way. It's in the classroom. You see, when I lecture my classes about gender or nationality or question of violence, I try to tell them from the get-go. I tell them I'm going to be very open in this classroom. If you don't like me, or if you have an issue with somebody else that is in the class, we need to be open and talk about this from the very beginning, because I said, I am sure we all have problems, and how to share those problems. I said the classroom is the only space where you can actually bring your different opinion and we begin to work on it. Because I said, I might have some prejudice, but I'm sure there is also prejudice in the class. When you put it that way, they're more amenable to actually talk to you. I said, I understand some of you might have problem that I'm a black faculty. But I said, I have no problem with you being white in this class. So let's be on equal terms. And you have to bring it in a way that then they say, oh, you have to. So it's like calming them down, and then they're ready to actually correspond. And some of them will take the challenge and actually ask the difficult questions, What I would like a legacy to leave behind would be to see that that there are more. I mean, I am proud in the last 4 or 5 years, the work of Rick Locke, the provost we had. He really understood the need for a more diverse sort of faculty, and he made an effort. I mean, he's not here amongst us, but he made a real effort to encourage different departments to diversify their department, and it has been a success. We had some amazing people that were hired in the last 5 years, of which I think a few of them were women. So that's the kind of legacy I'd like to see. More people like me, actually. I want to see also people to be more outspoken about issues of injustice, equity, problems of racism or discrimination. I would like people to articulate it openly and publicly. I see less of that today. And you know what? I know I'm leaving soon. I have no fear in articulating what I think. I think it benefits some people, but it allows others to say, oh, if she could do it, I can do it too. Let me speak up. So, I think we have a good school. And what makes this school good is the kinds of students we get and the faculty that we have. And that's why I want to see a more diverse faculty, even more so than that we have. I think we can make a good effort. Diversity shouldn't be just one. Multiplicity. I think the more diverse we are, the better the campus is. Yeah. Well, filmmaking it's not for everybody, by the way. So I never wanted to be a filmmaker. But one summer, my husband was in this village doing a film with a crew from Harvard about the work in that village. And they could not access the women. So in July, they was there already May and June. They get me a call and say, can you get a ticket and come? Because we need you. We cannot access the women. And, this is... So I went, and I had published my first book on the gift of the body. So it was on that village, and I said, sure. I went. For me, it was like I'm talking to you. It was that ease, because I knew what the women did in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and what are the different activities. And I said, sure. And I went there. And my difficulty wasn't me talking to them. My difficulty was the filmmaker who didn't know the language. And I had to tell him, turn the camera on. And he would say, well, I don't see any visual integrity here. And I said, it's not about this. I want to hear I want you to film what they're saying. And it was very hard for me to convince him this is important. He said, well, they're just sitting there. These are kind of argument and that's why my husband and I later on trained ourselves. He does the camera work and I do the sound, because then I just did the sound there. So that was my first introduction. I realized how easy it is if you know a community, have worked with them before, then it becomes really it's like slipping into something that you're so comfortable with. And you rarely see people staring at the camera because I'm talking to them. They're paying attention to what I'm saying. So that film, the first film, Seed and Earth, seed is maleness, earth is femaleness. And it's about conception and stuff like that. That film has won so many prizes, I cannot even begin to list them for you. Huge numbers. And you can just see it, read about it. And then that encouraged us to do more. So we went back to do two more challenging films. Well, also in India. One is about a Muslim community called Singing Pictures. It's about these women who draw scrolls, huge numbers of scrolls, and then they sing the scrolls. I can show you in a second if you wanted to see. And another one about men singing and talking about the art of scroll making. Now, to be able to do a documentary, these are ethnographic films, so they are different from documentary. To be able to do an ethnographic film, you need to have done research in a place. Otherwise, you really have no skills to know how to pitch the camera and at what time and where, and how to sort of point somebody to something that maybe visually isn't so attractive, but is very important. So you have to have done research in that for it to be really ethnographic. And what we did, most of them are based also on texts that we have published or articles we have published, and community that we have known and worked with very well. I can get into that town today with respect of saying, hey, I haven't seen you in a month or two, and usually 2 or 3 years. And you can pick a camera and do the work and do an interview. It's doable for people who have actually invested years studying a community. that's how we got to do these films. They're all ethnographic films. The last film is more it is ethnography, but it's more personal. It's about the life of my mother, and which is, I think, it's one of the most difficult films we've done, but also I think one of the most powerful films we've done, because when it was premiered here at Brown, it was premiered twice. Because the first time, that audience, it just filled the room and we couldn't get any more. And then a year later, we premiered it again. So when the film was first premiered here, people would some people were crying and some people were, and then a lot of people said, you claim this is your mother, but she's really not your mother. It's my mother too. And so appropriating a woman that you always think of as your mother, because of her experience, they could relate to her. I said, I'm glad you can have her, as you can share her too. But it was the most amazing thing that I had to go through when I premiered it here. So films, I think, are powerful. The reason they are powerful is you can pick a book and read it. You won't be able to see what it is you're reading. You can imagine, depending on how good a person writes. But text, words are different when they are visual. There is some power to visuality, and he can tell you. Because the visual, the image, has to tell you more than what you see. It has to have a connectivity to the idea that the filmmaker wanted you to also get. With singing pictures about the Muslim community in India, it talks about underrepresented minorities. They are minorities. And yet here they do scrolls about Hindu gods and goddesses. It's beautiful. The message is very clear there, that they are not anti this or anti that. In the first film, I think it fosters the idea that you look at seed and earth, male and female relationship, that in the day of a life of a people, following a woman, following a man. It really addresses the humanity that the film portrays. Ordinary, common people, they have the same worries about their children as you do, the same worries about the farms, the monsoon. And it was like, you see this film, I could easily be there. This could be easily me. And so all these films have something that they leave behind. A senator-type person who introduced in my mother's house in Carrara, she said to the people, there was huge crowd. She said to them, you should thank this woman for the film that she did. And somebody said, what is the reason? Before they see the film, I said, every time this film is shown in India, in different cities in India, in Europe, in different cities in Europe, or America, she said, it leaves behind a little bit of your town, Carrara. It leaves behind a little bit about the Italians. And it's so true. People identify with the part that they know they identify with, Carrara. And I said, how true is such a sentence? I am living Carrara in India. What do the Indians know about Carrara? They don't. But now if they've seen it, they think about something that connects to them. So all these films leave behind a bit of connectivity, good connectivity, cultural, social kinds of connections. And I'm sure people over the years would remember this one woman that it was in my mother's, a big poster that's out in my door. They would remember her not because who she was, but they've known something about it.
Is there anything else you'd like to share or us to include that I didn't ask you?
That will keep us here a long time. That will keep us a long time. It's okay.